All right. Cool. Hello, one and all. I am John Jakutis. Hopefully you know me. If you don't, awesome. Cool that you found this video. I'm going to be starting a series of educational videos because I can't work right now. Typically, I work in the home as a home teacher. So primarily these videos are designed for the students that I'm working with because their parents have requested some material for them to work on. So when I'm working on these videos, my thought process is going to be kind of geared towards them, but at the same time I want to make these universally applicable. So hopefully you find this material engaging and interesting, challenging for sure. That would be a hope of mine. I should say before I begin, I am a proponent of the stream of consciousness style of teaching. And if you're not familiar with that, then good on you. I sort of, not invented it, but I definitely am one of the few that prides themselves on minimal preparedness. I believe in a stream of consciousness style of teaching because, quick background, and I think it's useful for educational reasons. I've worked in a middle school for emotionally impaired students. And one of the things that I found pretty quickly early on is that if I had preparedness and a whole thing that I wanted to do and accomplish, sometimes that just got thrown right out the door. And my best successes on days where some of my students were, these are kids that would physically become violent, and we'd have to restrain them in situations where they were a threat to others or to themselves. And it was tough and sad sometimes because there's a 12-year-old kid that is just escalating and then screaming and kicking, and it's not fun for them, and it's not fun for the ones that have to do the restraining. But one of the things I started to see success on early on was dropping my preconceived notions of what I was trying to accomplish and just trying to get through on a base level, some sort of quick connection. Once I get that connection, then you can sort of build rapport because you're showing that you're listening. Now that draws into what I want to cover today. So I'm reading a book right now, Dr. Jordan Peterson's book, 12 Rules for Life. It's pretty interesting. There's 12 things that he comes up with that he pushes as prominent ideas, and then spends about 15, 20, 30 pages extrapolating on those ideas. And he's received some criticism for various things, and I'm not trying to get into any of that. I'm not picking sides. One of the things that I'm taught while working for the school system that I do, they tell me under no uncertain terms, I focus on education. Because I work in the home, and a lot of times parent situations, family situations, there's lots of things that can get involved. And I focus on education. That's my statement that I'm allowed to use, and so I'm using it in this situation too. I'm just going after what I think is interesting. So I'm on chapter 9, and like I said, each chapter is a rule. It's 12 rules for life, an antidote to chaos. So rule number 9 is assume that the person you are listening to might know something you don't. So I'm on page 243, if you want to follow along, if you find the material. A listening person. A listening person can reflect the crowd. He can do that without talking. He can do that merely by letting the talking person listen to himself. Now, there are a myriad of uses for such a technique. One of my favorite films is Fight Club, for a myriad of reasons. And in it, there is a scene where two characters are going to support groups for the terminally ill. And they catch each other because neither one of them has a terminal sickness. And so one asks the other, well, why do you go? And the main character says, well, when someone thinks you're terminally ill, they really listen to you versus just waiting for their chance to speak. I remember hearing that quote and letting it sit. It just sat in my head longer and longer and longer. And I didn't realize how much I was doing something like that until it sort of had been exposed in a way where I could see somebody else saying the words that I was thinking. There is a significant difference between waiting for your turn to speak versus letting someone else's words shape what you say next. Preparedness has a lot of benefits. In an educational setting, preparedness can take anxiety away from the classroom because they feel confident the teacher knows what's coming next, right? So there's bliss there. Well, what's the stereotype of why kids don't like school? Mainly because the teachers don't listen. They don't have time to. They have to stick to a timeline. They have to stick to a schedule. It's the best teachers. It's the ones that everybody remembers and talks about and thinks about and has changed their life. The best teachers are the ones that adapt. They have an interaction with the classroom, and that interaction is an adaptation. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit in this chapter. Now, Dr. Peterson talks about multiple different ways of talking to another person, and then he talks about the highest form, conversation on the way. It's on page 253. The final type of conversation, akin to listening, is a form of mutual exploration. It requires true reciprocity on the part of those listening and speaking. True reciprocity on the part of those listening and speaking. Now, reciprocity meaning reciprocal, a reciprocal relationship, give and take. It allows all participants to express and organize their thoughts. A conversation of mutual exploration has a topic, generally complex, of genuine interest to the participants. Everyone participating is trying to solve a problem, instead of insisting on the a priori validity of their own positions. There is something unique to having a conversation where all the participants are in a land of somewhat an unknown. To create a conversation as a group where you drop your preconceived statements. Think about the birth of language, right? Now, when you don't know how to speak, you have to learn somebody else's words. So everything you learn comes from other minds. Now, eventually you collect enough things, separate things from other minds, and you start to mix them in your own way, a recipe of sorts. And that becomes your identity. The way that you communicate starts off as a single source, a parent, parents, sibling, and then starts to become a mix of those things, a mix of other sources, TV shows, music, friends, movies, etc., books. Eventually you collect so many other things that you start to put together this genuine mishmash of all of it, and it becomes uniquely your own. So with time, you're able to create something fresh, in a sense. But the challenge is fear. There is an inherent fear in having a conversation where in the dead middle of it, you don't know what to say next. You're stumped or you become awkward. The irrationality of it all just sort of escalates in your head. So what do? We create archetypes, personas, ways of speech, catchphrases, commonalities. Oh, what's new? How's the weather? Oh, I'm good. How are you? How are the kids? Kids good. How are you? Like, there's a pitter-patter, like a table tennis to it, where you're just saying a statement to pass the ball to somebody else, and then they say a statement to pass the ball back to you. There's not a lot of genuine listening going there. There's an understanding that I'm doing a nice and good thing by filling in this gap with words that allow you to listen, and you can read my facial expression, and you can hear in my tone, and you can hear in my words as well that I'm delivering something warm to you, or something that's conveying I'm a part of the conversation and something that I think is going to help you. And then the person does the same thing back. They pass the ball back by saying something and filling up space. Just being in each other's presence is a warm thing, but standing and staring at each other blankly with no words, I mean, think about how awkward that would be. Unless you're in a romantic relationship with somebody, it's pretty uncommon and uncomfortable. So we all have this understanding, it's like a social contract, that when we're in each other's presence, we're going to make mouth noises. And we're going to make mouth noises that correlate to thoughts. Again, going back to anxiety, the challenge becomes you become over-dependent, over-reliant on the things that have been successful to you in the past. The thoughts, the mouth noises, so to speak, that you've previously used in previous conversations that went generally well, and got you from point A to point B. So you repeat, without even realizing it, a lot of the same things. Now, to an outside person looking in, it's very common and easy to notate someone's repeated catchphrases. The likes, the ums, the ands, those sort of things. Now, a lot of times in a relationship with family and partners and siblings, the reason why we become irritated with each other, among other reasons, is when you spend enough time with someone, you start to see their tropes, their catchphrases, their commonalities. And then what can be almost a glitch in the matrix of, take the red pill, and you can never unsee it. If you catch somebody not listening to you by them using the catchphrase that you've seen them use in the past in another scenario, or whatever, you catch them not genuinely listening. Well, what do? Are you going to waste your resources and time and effort spending energy and putting emphasis on original content and really listening to them? Probably not. You're going to power down. You're going to go into low power mode. You're going to say catchphrases. You're going to say things without a lot of thought. You're going to say things without a lot of listening.